P. Snyder Jr. is the last surviving stern-wheeler steam-driven towboat on our nation's waterways. Originally built in 1918 by Reese & Sons Company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the ship is now permanently berthed in the Muskingum River in Marietta, Ohio, where it is undergoing a complex restoration. The Ohio History Connection has been searching for replacement parts from around the country and around the world in order to restore the Snyder to its former glory and preserve the history of our country's waterways. Work proceeded normally until the Ohio History Connection was unable to locate an important porcelain insulator required to mount the interior lighting. So Chris Buchanan, the Restoration Project Coordinator for the Ohio History Connection, reached out to Ed McCormick, the CEO of EnvironMolds, the mold-making and casting materials company, and asked if the company could create an authentic replica part. EnvironMolds agreed, and Chris removed one of the original 1918 insulators from the stern wheeler and sent it to Ed at EnvironMolds, where a silicone rubber mold was made. EnvironMolds Mold-Right 25 silicone rubber captured all of the original detail, including its lettering and its mounting holes. Then, using its Cast-Easy polyurethane resin, several prototype parts were crafted. After testing several casting formulations, a mixture of resin and porcelain powder was used to create a part with a nearly identical weight, surface, and feel of the original component. EnvironMolds will generously gift over 100 pieces of newly cast insulators to the Ohio History Connection. It is its way to help with this important historical research and restoration project. This short video explains how the replacement parts were made. Because of the requirement for so many pieces, after creating the initial mold, we cast 9 copies in straight resin. That way we could create a multi-copy mold so that the amount of casting time could be reduced. Here we have hot glued 9 pieces to corrugated cardboard. Then we cut cardboard pieces for sides to make a mold box. Hot glue was laid around the bottom and sides of the box seams to prevent leakage. To create the mold, we used 2 1-pint kits, or 0.47 liters of Mold-Right 25, which is 2-part silicone. The kit includes the mixing container, a mixing stick, as well as latex gloves. The mix ratio is 10:1. Using a gram scale zeroed out to account for the weight of the container, we poured the white base material into the container. That is followed by the blue catalyst, which is 1/10 the weight of the base. The two materials are mixed together until there is an even blue shade without marbling. After mixing the silicone, we slowly poured it into the mold box, staying in one spot and allowing the silicone to envelop the parts. As you can see, 1 pint is not enough, so we mix an additional pint to make certain we have good coverage with at least a 1/2 inch thickness over the highest piece in the mold box. After pouring, we used a hand sander placed up against the sides of the mold box. This provides needed vibration to allow trapped air in the silicone to rise to the surface. The vibrations are needed for only about 2 minutes or so. Now the mold box is set aside undisturbed to allow the silicone rubber to cure. The next morning, we began the demolding by tearing away the sides of the mold box. We slowly pulled the mold away from the resin models to allow the rubber in the holes to pull out without tearing. Here is the completed mold shown next to the resin models that we had fastened to corrugated cardboard the day before. The next step is casting. From our previous formulation experiments, we found that a ratio of 60% porcelain powder to 40% resin provided the best duplication results. Using the Cast EZ resin kit for the resin to bind the porcelain powder, we set up 3 small paper cups. The first is filled with porcelain powder. The other 2 receive just under a half fill of part A and a half fill of part B of the resin in each of the other cups. To begin the mixing, half the porcelain powder is emptied into each resin cup and mixed thoroughly so that there are no lumps. Then each cup is combined into a larger mixing container and thoroughly mixed again. After which I begin pouring the casting mix into the silicone mold. After the mold is filled, it is set aside for 4 hours to thoroughly cure. When the castings have set, the mold is flexed, and each casting is carefully pulled from the mold, taking care not to rip the delicate mold holes. For the next several days, we continued pouring the castings until we accumulated the over 100 pieces that are needed for the W.P. Snyder Jr. After demolding, the parts need to be cleaned up and polished as the last task before packaging and shipping them out for delivery. By taking on the challenge of reproducing a rare, difficult-to-manufacture part, we like to think that Environ Molds lives up to its reputation of being able to reproduce almost anything.